I leaned back in my chair, fingers tracing the edge of my glass as I stared at the city skyline outside. The dim lights of my office were soothing, a calm before the storm that was about to hit. I was supposed to feel anxious, nervous, maybe even a little scared. But all I could feel was the steady pulse of my own heartbeat. The calm before the game I had been playing for years. The door creaked open, and I didn't even look up. "You wanted to see me," my voice was cold. Casual, too casual for what was coming. "Claire." Victor's voice held the same tone it always did, controlled. "Rehearsed. We need to talk. About your future?" I could feel him standing there, watching me, waiting for me to say something. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Not today. He sighed. "The sound too loud in the quiet room. We've arranged everything for you in Austin. It's time for a fresh start." His words landed like a slap across my face. But I didn't flinch. I was past flinching. I looked up then, meeting his eyes, and I saw the pitiful concern in them. "A fresh start," I repeated, leaning forward slightly, my voice dropping lower. "You think I need a fresh start?" Dad, my lips curled into a smile, just sharp enough to be dangerous. "Funny. I think I've already started." Victor's expression faltered, just for a second. That's all it took for me to see that I had him right where I wanted him. I wasn't going anywhere. They thought they were sending me away, but I was already gone. They just hadn't noticed yet. I walked into the dining room with my head held high. But inside, I could feel the familiar tension creeping up my spine. The large oak table sat in the center of the room, polished to a mirror finish, reflecting the chandelier's soft light. My father sat at the head of the table, his posture perfect as always, eyes sharp and calculating, but with a hint of something else beneath the surface, an expectation, a quiet pressure. Across from him, my mother adjusted the strings of pearls around her neck, her fingers moving delicately, each touch practiced and precise. Maddie sat beside her, her smile almost too wide, the kind that never reached her eyes, as she checked her phone once again, making sure the angle was perfect for the next picture. They were all waiting for me to sit down, to play my part in whatever little performance they had prepared for tonight. I took a seat in the chair the maitre d' had pulled out for me, the leather creaking under my weight, and immediately felt their eyes on me. It was like being placed in front of a firing squad. But they didn't know I'd already planned my escape. The room fell silent for a brief moment. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like a storm building just before it breaks. "Claire," my father said, his voice smooth, almost warm, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. "We've been talking, and we think it's time for a fresh start. You need to get away from here. We've arranged everything for you." His words were slow, measured, like he was waiting for my reaction, like he thought he was offering me a lifeline. I tilted my head slightly, letting the silence stretch between us. "A fresh start," I repeated, my voice cool and controlled, just enough to let them feel the weight of my indifference. I looked at my mother, who finally glanced up from her phone, her expression one of practiced concern. "You think I need a fresh start?" Just like that, I motioned with one hand, a gesture that seemed casual but was calculated. "Precise." "Funny. I thought I already had one." My mother's eyes flickered with a hint of irritation. But she didn't say anything. She just dabbed at her lips with a napkin, like her next words were carefully chosen. "Claire," she began, her voice sickly sweet. "We're only trying to help. You've been struggling for so long. Austin could be the change you need." I turned my gaze to Maddie, who had just shifted her phone to get a better angle. Her smirk was tight, controlled, as if she knew exactly how this would play out. But what they didn't know was that I was done playing their game. Struggling, I repeated, leaning forward slightly, my tone laced with just the right amount of sarcasm. If I had $1 for every time you said that, I'd be rich enough to leave on my own. Victor's jaw tightened just a little, his eyes narrowing slightly, but he didn't respond. Instead, he reached for the velvet box sitting in front of him. A subtle movement, but one that caught my attention immediately. He slid it across the table toward me, positioning it just between the salt and pepper shakers, as if he were presenting me a gift. A fresh start, he'd said. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. I reached for the box, my fingers brushing against the smooth velvet, and opened it. Inside, a one-way ticket to Austin, departing in 48 hours. I looked up at him, meeting his eyes for the first time. Your seed capital, he said, his voice steady, emotionless. He slid a check toward me. A thick, heavy check that seemed almost too much for the moment. $5,000. Use it wisely. The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I folded the check in half with deliberate care, feeling the weight of it in my hand, the power of it, and slipped it into my purse without a second thought. They thought they were giving me charity. They had no idea that I had already won. I sat back in my chair, the soft hum of my office, the only sound that filled the space. The city skyline stretched out before me, the golden hour light reflecting off the glass buildings in the distance. I couldn't help but smile. Not because I was happy, but because I had finally managed to get here. The fresh start they thought I needed, it wasn't what I wanted at all. I had bigger plans. A lot bigger. My phone buzzed on the desk in front of me, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Harold, the only person in my life I could trust. The message was simple. Just a few words. The deal's going through. You're ready. I picked up the phone, my fingers dancing over the screen as I quickly typed back. Make sure everything's in place. Tomorrow's the day. I hit send and leaned back in my chair, eyes closing for just a moment. I could already feel the shift in the air, like everything was aligning exactly how I had planned. The family's little act, their misguided intervention, it was all coming together. And in a way they could never imagine. I was already on my way out. I set the phone down and turned my attention to the velvet box still sitting on the corner of my desk. The one they'd given me with such pride. $5,000. A plane ticket to Austin. A fresh start, they'd said. I smiled again, this time with a hint of amusement. They thought they could solve everything with money and relocation. But they had no idea. That check, that ticket, they meant nothing to me. They were just distractions. Distractions I'd let them believe were important. What they didn't know was that I already had more than they could ever give me. I pulled open the drawer to my left, revealing the thick folder that held everything I had worked for over the past few months: documents, contracts, emails, and a few other things I had arranged for this exact moment. The acquisition deal, the one they were too blind to see, was already sealed. Tomorrow, it would be official. TerraSense would be sold, and I would walk away with $8.5 million. A new life, and more power than they would ever understand. I could feel my heart beating just a little faster now. Not from fear, but from the exhilaration of knowing what was coming. I had spent my whole life being overlooked, dismissed, told I wasn't good enough. But not anymore. As I pulled up the documents on my screen, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. I glanced at the number. It was Adam. Of course, it was. He'd probably heard about the deal, just like the rest of them would soon. I let the call ring out, not bothering to pick up. I didn't need him now. I didn't need anyone from that life anymore. They were all irrelevant. I leaned forward, eyes scanning the contracts on the screen, double-checking everything for the final time. As I read, my mind flashed back to that night at the gala, how my father had looked at me with such disdain, how he'd pulled me aside afterward to tell me that I was embarrassing the family. It was that moment, that cold look in his eyes, that made me decide it was time to break free. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through the messages in my inbox. There it was, the confirmation of the wire transfer. The one they thought would never happen. The one they never expected from me. I smiled as I read it. Tomorrow, everything would change. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Harold. I waved him in without saying a word. He stepped inside, holding a manila envelope. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the faint glimmer of respect in his eyes. He placed the envelope on the desk and slid it toward me. "This is everything," he said. "It's done." I took the envelope, feeling its weight. I didn't need to open it. I already knew what was inside. It was the last piece of the puzzle. The final confirmation that I was no longer part of their game. "Good," I said, my voice calm, almost casual. "Let's make sure they never see this coming." Harold didn't respond, but I could see the understanding in his eyes. He knew exactly what I meant. I stood up, feeling the power surge through me. It wasn't just the money, or the acquisition, or the revenge. It was the fact that I had finally taken control. They thought they were sending me to Austin. They thought they were fixing me. But they were wrong. I had already moved on. And tomorrow, they would learn exactly how far I had gone. "Iset mi disk." The soft glow of the desk lamp casting shadows across the room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, checking the final details of everything I'd spent months preparing, feeling the weight of it all settle in. Tomorrow would be the start of everything. Changing my family would never know what hit them. As I processed everything, a knock came at the door. And without needing to look up, I knew who it was. Harold stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. But his eyes betrayed a mix of anticipation and something else concern. "Maybe." "It's done," he said, his voice low and steady as he placed a manila folder on the desk. He didn't have to say anything else. I could tell by the way he stood that he knew I was ready. I opened the folder slowly, each page falling into place, confirming everything we'd set up. A small smile tugged at my lips as I absorbed the finality of it. This was real. It was happening. Tomorrow, I murmured under my breath. Knowing the game was about to shift permanently in my favor, Harold stayed quiet, letting the silence settle around us as I looked through the documents one last time. "There's no way they can stop this now," he said, his voice almost a whisper, as if he, too, understood the magnitude of the moment. I closed the folder with a final, deliberate motion, my mind already moving ahead to what came next. Tomorrow, everything would be different, and no one would be able to stop it. Not my family. Not anyone. Tomorrow, they'll never see it coming, I said, my voice calm but full of certainty. My phone buzzed on the desk, and I glanced at it, seeing Maddie's name on the screen. "Heard about the deal. Think you're finally getting your life together." I couldn't help the slight smirk that tugged at the corner of my lips as I read it. I quickly typed back, "I'm doing just fine. Maddie. Thanks for asking. I'm finally in control." Harold glanced at me, a raised eyebrow the only hint he was waiting for an explanation. I didn't give him one. He didn't need it. He already knew everything. "They don't know what's coming," he said, his voice quiet but full of conviction. I stood up from my desk, slipping my coat on with practiced ease, knowing that everything I needed to do had already been set in motion. They never will, I said, walking toward the door, my heart steady as I stepped into the hallway. Tomorrow, the world would change, and I would be the one standing tall. I didn't look back as I left the office, the finality of my decision sinking in with every step. The deal was sealed, and nothing would stop me now. I stood outside the glass doors of the building, the world around me moving in a blur as I tried to center myself. Inside, the high-rise was quiet, almost too quiet, as if everyone knew what was about to happen. I had planned every detail, down to the last second. Every step had led to this one moment, and there was no turning back now. My hands were steady as I reached for the door handle, the cool metal under my fingers grounding me, reminding me that I had control. The past year, the schemes, the betrayals, it was all about to come to an end. The elevator ride up was brief, but every second felt stretched, like time itself was teasing me, testing my resolve. When the doors finally slid open, I walked out without hesitation. I could feel the weight of their gazes as I moved through the lobby, the whispers that followed me like a ghost. But I didn't care. I was here for one reason, and one reason only. I reached the conference room, where my father, Victor, sat at the head of the table, looking every bit the powerful CEO he was. His posture was perfect, his expression unreadable, as if he had rehearsed this moment in his mind 1,000 times. Beside him sat Maddie, her eyes sharp, her smile tightly controlled as always. She didn't look up from her phone when I entered, but I could see the subtle twitch of her fingers as she typed, no doubt preparing for whatever performance they had planned for today. Helen, my mother, was seated across from them, her perfectly manicured hands folded neatly on the table. She didn't bother to look at me either, just continued to sip her drink with a small, knowing smile on her face. "You're late." My father's voice cut through the silence, his eyes narrowing as he looked up at me. He didn't wait for me to respond. Already continuing, "We've all been waiting for you. Claire, this isn't a discussion anymore, it's a decision. You need to leave this place. Austin is the fresh start you need. It's already arranged." I stepped closer to the table, my heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. I could feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on me, but I refused to let it show. I knew what they thought. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought I'd fold under the pressure, take the easy way out, but they didn't know me anymore. They hadn't known me for a long time. "I've already heard all of this," I said, my voice calm, measured. I could feel their eyes on me, but I kept my gaze steady. I wasn't going to let them see how much I was controlling this moment. "A fresh start, or is it just easier for you to pretend I'm the problem? How many more times are you going to try to fix me?" Victor shifted in his chair, but his expression remained tight. "This isn't about fixing you, Claire. This is about you getting your life together, about you finding your way. You've had a rough time, and we're offering you the chance to move forward. You don't have to do this alone." "Move forward," I repeated, my lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "You've been telling me that my whole life, haven't you, Dad? And yet, every time I try to move forward, you're there to pull me back. You want me in Austin, away from everything, away from you, away from my life. This is just another way for you to control me. You never wanted me to succeed on my own. Did you?" The tension in the room thickened, but my father didn't flinch. He simply leaned forward, folding his hands in front of him. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Claire, you've been stubborn your whole life. I'm offering you a way out. You're going to accept it, whether you want to or not." I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. This was it, the final moment of their plan to control me. I could feel the weight of the decision hanging in the air, but it wasn't my decision anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. I'm not going to Austin. Dad, I said, my voice firm. I don't need your help. And I don't need you to fix me. I've already fixed myself. Maddie finally looked up from her phone, her sharp eyes meeting mine. There was no warmth in her gaze, just cold. Calculating judgment. You really think you can just walk away from this family? From everything we've built, you're throwing it all away. I'm not throwing anything away, I replied, my voice calm but ice cold. I'm just finally taking control. You've always been the perfect one, haven't you? Maddie, the one who got everything handed to her. But I'm not you. I'm not going to play your game anymore. I could see her jaw tighten, her eyes flashing with frustration. But she didn't say anything. Instead, she reached for her phone again, her fingers tapping furiously, as if she were preparing for a war of her own. Helen, who had remained quiet until now, leaned forward slightly, her gaze never leaving mine. You're making a mistake, Claire. A huge mistake. This family has always taken care of you. We've always known what's best for you. You'll regret this. Regretty shook my head slowly, taking a step closer to the table. No. Mom, I don't think I will. What I'll regret is not doing this sooner. For a moment, the room fell into complete silence, the weight of my words settling in. I knew they didn't expect me to fight back. I knew they thought I'd cave in, take the easy way out, and let them sweep everything under the rug. But I was done being their puppet, done being the daughter who didn't fit their mold. Victor stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the floor as he pushed it back. You're making a huge mistake. Claire, you think you can just walk away from all of this? His voice was low, but there was a faint tremor in it now, one he couldn't hide. I held my ground, my gaze unwavering. No. Dad, I'm not walking away from anything. I'm taking what's mine, and you're going to watch me succeed while you all stay in your little bubble of denial. He opened his mouth to say something more, but I cut him off, not giving him the satisfaction of one more word. This meeting is over, I said, my voice final. I'll see you at the top. I turned and walked out of the room without another glance, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silence behind me. I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the soft hum of the city outside, blending with the sound of my own thoughts. It had been hours since I walked out of that conference room, but the weight of what I had done still lingered in the air. The last conversation, the final confrontation with my family, replayed in my mind. I could feel the anger in their eyes, the disbelief that I was walking away from everything they had tried to control. They thought they had power over me, but they didn't realize that I had already taken everything I needed. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping me back to reality. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Harold, the only person who truly understood what I was doing. The transfer went through. It's official now. I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. It was done. I had the money, the power, and the freedom I had been fighting for. But as I sat there, staring at the glowing screen, I couldn't ignore the nagging thought in the back of my mind. The fallout was coming. Just as the thought crossed my mind, my phone rang. It was from my mother. Helen, I had been expecting this. I took a deep breath and swiped to answer, knowing this would be the first of many calls. Claire. Her voice came through, smooth and tight, as if she were holding back something sharp. We need to talk. This nonsense has gone too far. I didn't respond right away. letting her words hang in the air between us. She was trying to control the conversation, to make me feel guilty for stepping out of line. But I wasn't going to let her. "I'm not interested." "Mom," I said, my voice calm. Almost too calm. "I've already made my decision. I don't understand why you're doing this," she continued, the frustration creeping into her voice now. "You've ruined everything. Claire, do you think they'll just accept you? You think they'll ever respect you if you keep acting like this?" I could hear the sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, her grip on the conversation slipping just a little. "You always thought I needed fixing," I replied, leaning back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. "Well, I'm not broken. Mom, I've never been." For a moment, there was silence. And then she spoke again, her voice lower now, more controlled. "This isn't just about you, Claire. It's about the family. You're turning your back on us, and you'll regret it. We've always been there for you." I felt a flicker of something regret. Maybe. Or something like it, but I pushed it down, focusing on the weight of the decision I had made. "You were never really there for me, Mom. Not in the way I needed. You were always too busy making sure I fit into your perfect picture of who I should be." I could hear her sigh, the sound heavy with defeat. "I don't know what happened to you. You were never like this." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't let it show. Maybe I've just started seeing things clearly. The line went quiet again, and I knew she was waiting for me to apologize, to back down. But I wasn't going to. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to second-guess it. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, cutting the conversation short. I hung up and set the phone down, feeling the finality of the moment wash over me. I had crossed a line. There was no going back now. I picked up the check that was still in my purse, the one they had handed me earlier, $5,000, a symbol of everything they thought I needed. I smiled bitterly as I slipped it back into the envelope, the same one I'd kept hidden in the drawer. It meant nothing to me anymore. The next message that popped up on my phone was from my father. "You've made a mistake, Claire. You'll see. No one will ever respect you if you turn your back on the family." I stared at the screen for a long moment, not bothering to respond. I didn't need to. He was wrong, and I was about to show him how wrong he was. The last message came through as I walked toward the window, pulling back the curtain to let the early morning light flood the room. "Maddie, this is your last chance. Claire, if you want to stay a part of this family, you need to come to Austin. It's not too late." I paused, my fingers hovering over the screen. But I didn't type back. Maddie would never understand. They all thought I needed fixing. They had no idea I had already done what they couldn't. I walked away from the window, my footsteps steady as I moved toward the door. Tomorrow, everything would change. The fallout would be huge. But I was ready. They had underestimated me for the last time. I stood by the window of my new apartment, the skyline of the city stretching out before me, its lights twinkling like stars. The city felt vast. But somehow, for the first time in a long while, I felt small enough to take it all in. My phone buzzed on the counter beside me, and I glanced at the screen, another message from my father. "We're still waiting for you. Claire, you can fix this. It's not too late." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had already made my choice, and there was no going back. I turned away from the window, my fingers running along the edges of the glass. The room felt quiet, but in a way that made it feel like the calm after a storm. I could already hear the sound of the city in the distance. And I knew that tomorrow, when the world would know my name, my family would finally understand. This was my fresh start, not theirs. Thank you for watching Claire's journey unfold. If you've ever felt misunderstood or underestimated, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful stories about taking control and rewriting your own fate.